The while loop and the do while loop are both loops to repeat a certain task a certain amount of times. So imagine you want to do something 10 times, for example. Then you can define a variable, for example, let I be equal to 0. Now we can create a loop by using the while keyword. And inside of this loop, we can, for example, say while I is less than 10. We want to console.log I, for example. And if I would just start this loop would basically run forever because I will never be incremented. This means I will always be 0 and this loop will always keep going and going and going. And this would be an infinite loop. So to break out of this loop at a certain time, we need to increment I every time we run our loop. So I'm going to say right here, we will do I++ to increment I by 1 every time we run this loop. And you really have to think about this loop in the following way. We basically run this loop for the first time. I is equal to 0. We are going to console.log I, and then we will increment I. So in the next iteration, we will check this condition. I is 1, I is still less than 10, so we are going to console.log I, and we will increment I by 1. In the next iteration, I is equal to 2, which is still less than 10. We are going to console.log I, and we will increment I by 1. So we are going to repeat this until I essentially reaches 9. We are going to run this loop again. We will increment I. And for the next iteration, we will check, okay, is 10 less than 10? 10 is not less than 10 because 10 is equal to 10. So at this point, we are breaking out of this loop. And now I'm going to show you how this works. And I'm just going to run the code. And as you can see in the terminal right below, we will now have the numbers from 0 to 9. So essentially all of the numbers that are less than 10. Now there also exists a slight variation. So imagine we're going to put 10 in here. And now I'm going to clear the console so we can see the difference. And now I'm going to run the code. And as you can see, we don't have any output. And the reason for this is in the first iteration already, 10 is not less than 10. So this loop will never run. But there's also an alternative, and that is the do while loop. So let's say we're going to have do right here. Now we'll have the body. And inside of this body, we are going to console.log I, and we will also increment I by 1 inside of this loop. So we have the exact same loop. The only difference is that we are starting with the do. And right here, we have the condition after our brackets. And for this condition, let's also say while I is less than 10. So since we have the exact same loop, this loop shouldn't run as well, right? Because I is never less than 10. So let's try this out. And let's also run the code. And as you can see, we get the output of 10. And the reason for this is this loop always starts with the do block. So we are going to execute this block no matter the condition, because essentially this one here comes first. And after we've executed the call block, we are going to check the condition, which is not true in this case. So at this point, we will stop the loop. So the difference between while and the do while loop is that the do while loop will run at least once, while the while loop does not have to run once if the condition never equals true.